Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, we're here today to do an episode of a look back at a classic rock album, a show in which I take an album that's 15 years or older, that is at least a 2, high 2, 1, or a masterpiece for me. And we talk about the album. Basically, that's all there is to it. The album we're doing today is this one, Jethro Tull's Roots to Branches. Sorry, I drew a blank there for a sec. Roots to Branches. This was released September the 4th, 1995. It's about 60 minutes long, which is fairly long for an album for me anyways. Studio, it was recorded at Ian Anderson's home studio on Chrysalis Records, produced by Ian Anderson, of course. Personnel on the album: Ian Anderson on vocals, flute, and acoustic guitar. Martin Barr on electric guitar. David Pegg on bass on tracks 3, 5, and 11. Andrew Giddings on keys, or keyboards if you prefer, and Doane Perry on drums and percussion. Additional musicians, Steve Bailey doing bass on tracks 1 and 6 through 10. So this is like I said, this pretty decent album. Coming out towards the end of that first kind of great era of Jethro Tull. Once they get to the Christmas album in a few years, they then stop making albums for almost 20 years, and it looks like they're probably done at that point. And since then, they've done 3 more in the last. They went 20 years without any, and then 3 in the last 4 years. That sometimes is the way it is. So this album has, I believe it's 3, 9. And I think there's 11 tracks in total on here. So the overall feel of this album, it's definitely a Jethro Tull album feel. It's not a heavy album. It does have some heavy points in it, but generally speaking, I find this a more subdued album than some of its predecessors. Lots of flute, of course. There's quite a bit of keyboards on this album as well. Piano, lots of piano. And there is some guitar parts, but nothing outstanding like you would get on some of the older Jethro Tull albums. But it's got a kind of a catchy feel to it. I think it's got that kind of, it's a little bit of that. I might want to say folky element to it. And, of course, some of that more pastoral sound to it than you might normally get on a Tull album at this stage of the game either. I like this album. It kind of took a while to grow on me, but I've grown to like it. I've debated on whether, because it was on my playlist at the same time as Catfish Rising. Catfish has since been pulled off, but this one is still in there. I think it was a little bit, maybe a month behind when it came on. At first, I thought I probably liked Catfish Rising more. I'm not so sure now. Might be Catfish Rising a little bit heavier of an album, so I think maybe in the long run I might end up liking that a little bit more. It's hard to tell. So anyways, opening track, Roots to Branches, which is the first track on here. It's got some kind of acoustic guitar part. It's got a bit of that Indian influence or Eastern influence. Sorry, I'm having a hard time staying awake today. A bit of that Eastern influence on it. The vocals, of course, are more subdued as it is throughout most of the tracks here. His voice is probably deteriorated to a point, but it's not like it is now. But it's somewhere between the two. It builds on more of a dominant flute sound on this particular track. Yeah, it's definitely a periodically there's a periodically heavy part throughout it, but most of the song is pretty subdued, but not a bad track. I like this track. The second track out, Rare and Precious Chain. So the Rare and Precious Chain, this was one of my favorite tracks on the album. A little bit more electric here. Electric guitar. More of that Eastern sound, of course, on this particular track. Heavy, catchy riff. The vocals are good, but in a more subdued range, as it is, you will see throughout most of the album when you're listening to it. The flute is great on this track, one of the best tracks. So I think this is probably one of my favorite tracks, top two anyways. Next is Out of the Noise. Not as crazy about this particular track. It's kind of a heavy but poppy at the same time. A bit of a catchy riff here. The flute, of course, and the guitar are pretty dominant, with the riffing of the guitar being the main part here. And the vocals are in that low but familiar range. Next side, so the next few tracks out, you got this Free Will. Flute dominated with some keyboard parts here. The vocals are emotional, but in the medium to low range sound. It's got a catchy riff, and the solo is heavy, but in that mid-range too, so it's not too heavy of a song. Valley is the next song. The flute opening again with some more heavy guitar. I got some quirky kind of lyrics on this particular track. Catchy riff. Vocals are a bit more subdued here. The flute and the guitar, yeah, pretty strong here, at least on the back half of it anyways. Then you have Dangerous Veils, fast-paced. It opens with a flute, but it's a faster-paced song. The keys are heavy. The guitar is heavy. The drums here are more dominant than they are on most of the other tracks. It's a heavy but catchy riff. I found the vocals, again, to be more subdued, but a little bit on the raspy side on this particular track. Some piano on this, but a little bit more fast-paced than it is on some of the other tracks. This next track up, Beside Myself, is probably the other song that I would say is probably my favorite on the album. It's slow but heavy. Got some biting guitar parts here. The flute and the piano give it a slow melodic part throughout the middle of the song. The vocals are busy but clear, and the guitar riff and the flute part are catchy, especially towards the end of the song. Pretty heavy as well, heavy parts. Wounded, Old, and Treacherous. This is a fairly, it's a pretty decent track. The flute and the piano are kind of more dominant on this particular track. Yeah, nothing particularly spectacular here. It's a bit of a longer song too, which is also the case with the next song, which is At Last Forever. It's more of a piano, flute, and there's a little bit of that chimey sound going on. It's more subdued track, not overly heavy. Fits well in the mix, but nothing terribly memorable about it. So then we get to the final two tracks. Stuck in the August Rain. I do like this track. Probably one of my top 4 or 5 on the album. Vocals are clear and catchy. It's a bit of more of an emotional track as well. Lots of flute, heavy bass and guitar parts throughout this track. And then the final track, which is one of the more memorable tracks on the album, another Harry's Bar. This is a slow, clear vocal song, subdued track, a melodic kind of storytelling song. Yeah, it's almost like it almost has that feeling of like a reminiscent type feeling to it. Anyways, overall, a pretty strong album. I don't know if it would crack my top 10 Tull albums. I doubt it. Feels more like a mid-range album. Probably would finish. So there's like 24 Tull albums, or 23 or 24 Tull albums now in total. This is Probably top half, but not top 10. So maybe like 11th or 12th place. I'm not sure. Well, eventually, I'm going to do a Tull ranking when I'm finished all of the albums. This one would probably crack the top half of the album. So, anyways, good album, solid, and I like it. So there you have it. Jethro Tull's Roots to Branches, released in 95, was it? I think it was in 95. Yes, somewhere here I wrote it. Yeah, released in September of 95. So, you're looking like now, that's 30 years ago, for Christ's sake. Hard to believe. And at that point, they would have been a band that had been around 25 years. Yeah, so a long history with this band. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please hit the like and subscribe. That's much appreciated. If you want to make any comments about the Jethro Tull in general, or if you want to make comments about Roots to Branches, you can do that. If you have anything you want to add or anything that you think is important to know, you can do that as well. Anyways, I hope to see you all next Monday on another look back at another classic rock album. So take care and have yourself a good evening. Goodbye.